So how can one know that you're making progress in the practice if your practice is going right or is it going wrong?
Well, that's something related to what we spoke before, being self-transparent and authentic. If you are self-transparent, and by that it's meant if you don't lie to yourself, as in if you don't try to turn a blind eye to the truth, and in this case, the truth being you are not free from suffering. Everybody starts as a putujana. So that should be your criteria, which means whatever you're doing in terms of the practice, it should be freeing you from suffering. At least to a degree that you can then start discerning, and then use that criteria to keep doing that thing more. But the reason why it won't be so easy is because people are not self-transparent, because that's done for the purpose of protecting oneself from suffering. You don't acknowledge certain truths, you don't admit to yourself, you hold a view, you defend a stance point. All that is done so you don't expose yourself to that existential suffering. So if you remove that attitude, and then you're not suffering as a result of your practice, you can know that you are on a better way to free yourself from suffering. But if you don't remove that attitude, whatever you end up doing on the pretext of practice, it's going to be done as a form of cover-up very often. You can also ask yourself whether you're covering things up by see if you get upset by when you encounter other people's views. They're different than yours. If you take them personally, if you feel threatened by them. If you are, it means you're holding on to your own. Even if those views happen to be right that you have, the fact that you're holding them means they're not right. You're not right.
It's very different than like expecting a kind of feeling or a perceptual like light. Oh,
sure.
I saw the blue light.
Oh, yeah.
Now that means I've reached stage
what do I
one.
do next after the blue stage? Yeah. No, nothing like that in the suttas. I'm sure there's plenty of contemporary meditations being taught along those lines, and if you're meditating to get a blue light or whatever you want, by all means, but that's not freedom from suffering. Freedom from suffering lies only in one thing, and that thing is understanding the nature of things. Hence, the Dhamma. Dhamma means phenomena. That's it, means things. The Dhamma means knowledge of those. And knowledge not like a informational sort of collecting the data and like laying it all out in a psychological manner. No, understanding the nature of the arisen things, things that have nature to manifest. What's their fundamental universal nature? You understand that fully, you are free from suffering. You can't suffer because you can't appropriate it. And that has nothing to do, even if you never see any special lights or have special experiences. As Sariputta said himself, he was the foremost after the Buddha. According to the Buddha himself, he said, Sariputta is the foremost after me. And he said he couldn't even see a mere goblin, let alone have any other supernatural experience or release. He was all clarity of understanding and mindfulness and wisdom, basically. And that's why he was the second after the Buddha. While others who had, fly in the air and glide the sun and the moon and see the future lives and past lives and all, there's nothing to do with the freedom from suffering. Sure, it can be a side effect of it for some, but it's completely irrelevant.
I suppose that's what people are looking for, kind of a
novelty.
External thing
Yeah.
I can show everybody.
Well, because people's views are generally, they start by being fully embedded in their conceit and self-centeredness, vanity often, sensuality. So then you just judge the new spiritual find inspiration, you judge with those criteria. What's unique, what's new, what's uncommon, what's lofty in that sense. And also, very often, what can be kind of accessed quickly and be so pleasant it fully overwhelms me. It's just extension of sensual craving, basically, directed elsewhere.
So should you challenge yourself? So if you want to see where you're at in the practice, should you put challenges upon yourself, like ascetic practices?
Absolutely, especially if you have none. If your life is quite a comfortable, easy, no physical discomfort, anything like that. Absolutely, yeah. You use common sense. You don't challenge yourself to the point of risking your life while you're still unenlightened. That's what they say. You would wisely avoid a wild elephant, a mad cow, or a raging dog. But that doesn't mean you would go and climb on top of a palace and live sheltered and hidden for the rest of his life. No. And I think we addressed it before probably, but as it is the case with most people today, on average, certainly in Europe and America, on average people are soft. Like even those who are kind of not as wealthy, have to work, they still have relatively comfortable lives in comparison to how it used to be back in the day in India. So that's something you have to factor in, the threshold from which you begin.
So one of those things that you could challenge yourself with is solitude.
Yeah, sure.
You know, trying to be alone.
Well, that is a challenge, and that is also a necessity. That's why people actually congregate and come together and live together and pair up, put up with all sorts of discomforts, because solitude is far more terrifying than anything else. So it's not optional. It's something your practice should be going towards. That's why the Buddha would say you develop the recognition of pleasure in solitude, basically. You learn how to find solitude valuable and pleasing. Otherwise it won't be. And you can only learn that through discernment, through understanding. That's how you see the benefits of it, and that's how you see the dangers when the solitude is absent. That's how you develop a value, a factual value of solitude.
So how can a layperson do it? Solitude?
Well, it really depends how far that layperson wants to go. If they're thinking about, practicing towards arahantship, anagami, yeah, you can't be a layperson. I mean, theoretically, you can be an anagami as a layperson, but that was...
Or live like a layperson.
Or live like a layperson, sure.
You can live like a
sure,
layperson.
sure. You can do that, but even back in the Buddha's time, that was not common. Usually people would go forward. But, so today it's kind of virtually impossible. If you want to go that far, you would have to give up the way of a householder's life. You just can't. I mean, you don't necessarily have to go and become a monk, but you have to live like a renunciate, like somebody who's practicing restraint, lives a celibate life, secluded from people. Not just secluded by not engaging with them, but living with them, but actually physically removed from people. That is necessary. Certainly for the periods of time. So again, you have to recognize that if you don't want to leave the life of a layman that you know, then you have to sort of lower down your expectations in terms of how much you can develop.
Because there's a lot of people are alone in the city.
Live
alone,
but they're not alone. Exactly.
Below you, above you,
Yeah.
people everywhere.
Yeah, being like living alone doesn't mean you're actually alone.
Yeah. There's no sign of solitude in that sense.
You need that physical distance, at least initially, to discern the sign of solitude, to discern the sign of your own mind in a way, the framework of others as a phenomenon, all that, basically jhana, any sort of establishment of mind. You can't just sit in a hall with 30 other people on a retreat. Even if you're all perfectly silent, you are with others. There are others, and that, well, it affects the outlook of your experience at the time when you're present. If you remove yourself from it, then you get to understand the framework of that experience. Then yes, you can theoretically be with others and not be affected by that on that existential level. But as I said, we all start with a mistake of ignorance, with a mistake of avijja that is beginningless and real as such. Which means you have to reverse to a degree in order to get to see the nature of things, and then you can go back to some of it. But you still wouldn't be able to live as a layman, for somebody who has understood it properly, freed himself from sensuality, became an arahant. So again, if you recognize the limitations that you are not willing to give up, as in you don't want to go and become a monk and so on, then you just have to measure what you can do in that setup and try and tailor your lay setup. So if you have to work 5 days a week, well, the other 2 days, I don't know, rent a cabin in the middle of the forest and that's where you spend it. Don't spend the valuable time that you can have in solitude just socializing with others. Spend it in seclusion, study, if you still need to clarify what you need to do, and so on.
Well, there's different kinds of solitude. There's a physical seclusion, mental seclusion. So
oh yeah, sure,
you could say,
sure.
I don't need physical seclusion because the mental seclusion is utmost
That's true,
important.
but in order to develop a proper mental seclusion, that can only be done through physical seclusion. And yes, like again, if a lay person is not able to have a complete physical seclusion, well, then you do the best out of what you can. So in a sense, if you can't be physically removed from people, well, at least spend your time not engaging with them if you don't have to engage. Don't talk to them. If you have to talk, well, then talk the bare minimum. Don't go further.
That's difficult because that's a form of engagement.
It is, yeah.
Not talking to the person that's sitting right next to
Sure,
you.
sure.
Yeah,
That's what I mean. You're already affected just by being with others. Even if there is a public agreement between us that we will not speak, it's still others. Presence of others, the assumption of the external point of view to yourself, all that is present. So you do have to be physically removed, some people more, some people less, for periods of time to develop certain clarity. I mean, just pick a sutta at random, and it is an 80% chance you'll be talking about value of solitude and forest, remote dwellings and empty lodgings, and go there and don't waste your time. And that's like one of the reasons why a layperson cannot develop these things is because the household life is crowded and dusty. It's crowded, it's always people, always things going on, and you can't practice them. So it's like you must abandon that type of life if you want to practice. And that again, even if you don't want to go and become a monk. So yes, the lifestyle choices matter. You can't not change any aspect of your lifestyle and expect to develop practice. You can't. I mean, the precepts are already a lifestyle choice.
So in terms of looking after yourself, physical health, what's going too far, and what's not going far enough?
What's going too far?
Like, are we supposed to eat just the bare minimum, just so that we can get just
right? I see what you mean. Yeah.
So you keep on breathing, keep on walking. Because if you're eating very little, obviously you start to waste away, and there is no chance a person in that kind of state going on pindapata.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
In a mountainous area.
Oh yeah, especially for the monks. Well, if they want to live like forest monks, not just in name, but actually in life.
Far away from other people.
Seclusion means effort. Seclusion means exposure to elements. Seclusion means ability to endure. Seclusion means toughness. Physical toughness, discomfort that doesn't bother you, that you find comfortable. Yeah, again, as I said, ultimately, if a person manages to properly develop their mind, properly establish their mind in jhana and in similar establishments, they will enjoy the roughness, toughness, discomfort even more. But in order to get there, they already need to be able to take a degree of pain without their mind just melting away, without the mindfulness fizzling out the moment that discomfort touches them, which is usually why people are afraid. And I speak out of personal experience. As a lay, you get into meditation, then immediately, I must stop anything. Basically, that will result in fatigue. Anything that will tire me, it will compromise my mindfulness.
Or make me sick.
Or make me sick, exactly. But
cold.
Well, that's the thing. Health it's the principle that you sort of open this up with. It's like when the Buddha said you can't stop eating because you will die. So what you do then? You can't blame food for your sensuality because you weren't there. Yet there's certain things you have to stop doing, such as sexual intercourse, killing others, and so on. that cannot be done wholesomely. But things that are necessary or things that are helpful can be determined helpful whether they are rooted in wholesome intentions. So if you're mindful, if you develop discernment, and if you invest effort in clarity of your motivation in regard to the reasons why you're eating food, as the Buddha himself said, sometimes he would eat 2 bowls of food filled to the brim, while he has disciples who live only on a handful of rice every 3rd day or whatever. But that doesn't mean the Buddha was sensual. It just means that at that time there was a need for more. Either way, even if he ate 10 bowls of food, for no point in that duration of that action of eating would have he been rooted in sensuality or in vanity or desire for physical beauty, so he eats so he can be healthy and admired by others. No, he ate because he was hungry. That's it. But that takes proper mindfulness, because if you are careless, then you're automatically eating out of sensuality. It's same with health. People get obsessed with their health and with their whatever tablets and multivitamins and acupunctures and all of that. That can help when there is a need for that help, but more often than not, people start protecting it just for the sake of it. But health is very much like the immune system. You'll develop it if you challenge it. If you don't, you lose it. So it's not accidental when you hear like, oh, the old monk in Thailand, 90-something years, walking Pindapat every single day of his life, like 4 or 5 kilometers, and lived to the old age fully active. Yeah, because he built basically his body adjusted.
Resilience.
Yeah, exactly. Through the exposure, through fatigue, effort, strength, endurance, all of that. Now, if your life doesn't require that, you don't have to do it specifically, although it would probably be useful to have some sort of physical discipline. Something that will tire you, something that will make your heart race, basically. So I don't mean like do spiritual sort of energy flows with your Tai Chi or some yoga twists and whatnot. You want actually to tire yourself to be able to see how can you be mindful whether you're tired or not. How can your mindfulness remain unaffected by that? Because if your mindfulness, and again I'm speaking that our personal experience as a layperson, like I was afraid to get tired. I stopped doing sport, stopped exercising, because it would disturb my mindfulness, which is because I didn't know what mindfulness was. So that which I thought was mindfulness was indeed disturbed by fatigue, by tiredness. So I must stop that. But it was a complete mistake. I wish somebody told me sooner, but fortunately, like I didn't end up hurting myself in terms of physically, as many monks do. When you stop everything, you just sit for a whole day, you don't do anything, and then suddenly you forget how unfit you are. You go for a massive long tudong or something, and you dislocate your disc slips and whatnot, and that happens when body is just weak. You lost a certain degree of resilience and strength, and you forgot about it.
You go lift a box and pop, that's it, because you've been doing.
Oh yeah, you move a pot plant and that's it. You end up at a chiropractor. How many times that happened to people? Like, loads. And all just because of that kind of same attitude of I must not get tired because they will disturb my mindfulness, and then becomes a habit of not getting tired. So that's what I mean. You want something that will tire you so that you can see that. Because if your mindfulness is disturbed by the mere fatigue, what are you going to do when you're facing death, illness, dying of cancer, body shutting down, hurting from every angle? No way to rest from it. There's no way. And again, think how the monks lived back in the Buddha's day, on the edges of Himalayas, like trekking for months at end, just to meet the Buddha in time. Yeah, try, like today if you want to do that, you need like military training. Like take an average guy, or you need to be doing that like gradually increasing for like decades to be able to do it. So you want to recognize this necessity and also indifference towards mindfulness, whether you're fatigued or not. Because if you're properly mindful, it doesn't matter. And then it won't matter whether you're in a deathbed, struggling to breathe, or you're perfectly healthy in full strength and full whatever. It doesn't matter. Because you discern where the mindfulness is. But yeah, if you blame your fatigue, if you blame things you have to do, if you blame work, if you blame exercise, well, good luck with that. Like you can sort of survive like that if you live in a precious environment that's usually based on luxury and comfort, even if you don't necessarily recognize it as such. But in Sabhasava Sutta, the Buddha said, there's a whole domain of asavas to be abandoned simply by enduring heat, cold, discomfort, tired, hunger. enduring insects, enduring elements, basically. So if you're not able to endure it, if your mind folds away from it, just as a prospect of enduring, you're nowhere near it. So that doesn't mean, of course, that people who live, like lay people who live in the cities, I must go and run and live in a mountain. It's not going to work. But you do need some sort of physical discipline, something that will challenge you and tire you and make you tougher and stronger.
But nothing too complicated either.
No, of course not. No, absolutely not. Because again, you want to have it rooted in those reasons. Because sure, people can be doing exercise for all sorts of reasons. For vanity, for wanting to be the best, the quickest, the strongest.
That's the number one reason for doing it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, that's why often people will project. They will think like, you can't do it for any other reason except the vanity. And then they also equally mistakenly project, thinking in order then to do something that won't be in vanity, it must be something completely different. And then they get doing like Tai Chi or things like that, which again, it's a valid form of exercise for some, but it's not the one you're looking after. It's not going to make you tougher or more resilient. So you want to look at things that actually are most economical. With the least effort, you get most result in terms of your exercise. So you don't have to spend 5 hours training and running and whatnot. But you do the minimum as a form of discipline, as a form of chore. And then it will pertain to everything else in a positive manner.
I suppose a lot of the type of work that people used to do generally is more physical, farm work and so on.
Sure.
And that's not done out of,
No, it's done out of necessity. As a side effect of that necessity was they were fit and tough and able to endure.
But now you have like gyms in the cities, which is basically set up a luxury. So, but it's all about mirrors and vanity.
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking that. Well, that's the thing. If it's not denying the lifestyle has changed, so you can't just go and start plowing the land and whatever, because there is absolutely no need for that anymore. But you recognize this, certain loss with that, which is that physical toughness and able to endure discomfort and pain. So if you want to compensate for that, you don't have to change your lifestyle to a great degree, but exactly, you do the training, you do the exercises, they will add up to that which you don't have. And especially as a monk who is interested to live like a forest monk, who is interested to live solely on Pindapat in the remote dwellings, frequenting the forests and stuff. If you just, we had that here happens, when people were 15 years younger than us came and stayed here for a couple of days. By the third day, they were dead. They were broken. Just having to walk 5 kilometers for their food. And it's done every day. And no problem. Almost look forward for it. So if you just...
Even the old ladies who live nearby.
My goodness, the tea picking ladies, exactly.
The tea picking.
Yeah, 70-year-old, just hill steep like this. I don't know, probably 15 kilos of tea leaves in the bag on her back. And he's there like a mountain deer, just not a slip, nothing. Because she's been doing it her whole life.
Out of vanity.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. Well, no, that's the thing. Somebody who hasn't been doing it, somebody who hasn't been doing it, in order to do it, more often than not, it's vanity is the reason. And in a way, that's fine if that's what makes you do it. But then you just change the reason and keep doing it. So for somebody who lives in the city, if you want to go and start, I don't know, endurance training or strength training, go to a gym that doesn't have the mirrors. That's the first thing. There's absolutely no reason for lifting in front of a mirror except vanity. Even in terms of the form and developing the proper lifting form, for example, in strength training, you should not look in the mirror. Like the Russian Olympic team. I don't know, maybe they still do it, but back in the day, they used to lift these complex Olympic snatches and power cleans and so on, blindfolded. Because you want to learn the motorics, you want to learn the movement. Hence the compound exercises, no mirror, strength, endurance, repetition, and increase in the weight.
But if you want to develop a muscle bulging out so that you be attracting...
You cannot do that for wholesome reasons, exactly. So if you being fit is a result of your discipline and basically pursuit of physical toughness and endurance, that's absolutely fine. In the same sense as you being healthy as a result of eating. That's fine. Just don't, because you can't slip into unwholesome accidentally. You can't accidentally like start eating for pleasure. No, you do it by deciding to go for pleasure. You can't accidentally go and start training with weights and accidentally do bodybuilding. No. Bodybuilding is all about basically developing proportions, developing size, which means it's all about the way you look, which means it's all about the vanity. But then if you don't do any form of that, if you actually do the strength endurance training, then you wouldn't need more than what, like half an hour, 3 times a week, using some proper strength like routines, proven, been around for like 40 years. And you wouldn't have to spend like 6 hours jogging and running and everything else. Not just that you'll be healthy, you'll also be able to take the pain. You wouldn't shy away from discomfort, you wouldn't shy away from physical fatigue, and nor would your mental composure be affected by it, because you trained yourself. Sure, or just take a backpack, go in the mountains and walk and live in a tent. And you'll get used to it, and you get tougher and you get stronger.
But again, back in the day, the olden days.
But back in the day, like it's not accidental that the Buddha kept referring to, like, living like trying to inspire monks with like similes of warriors and soldiers and toughness. Yeah, because it was like that. Imagine just like carrying a backpack of 5 kilos, let alone 15 or 20 kilos, and then hike for 20 kilometers on uneven terrain. That's a military training. Today that's considered almost like what, a military elite infantry. Yet that was your lifestyle, and you don't even get to sleep in a nice place. You get to sleep in under a root of a tree. So that's what I mean. Like, people might not think they live a luxurious life, but in comparison, it's very. Like even here on the hill where we do walk Pindapur every single day, 5 to 6 kilometers up and down the mountain, rain, wind, doesn't matter. Overall, it's actually quite comfortable up here, and it's quite easy. Because if you do want to have the ultimate perspective in your mind. How did the root of a tree dweller live? You think when they walked across the entire Bihar to meet the Buddha, they were just flying in the air? No, they're walking, carrying the bowl, which were probably heavy cast iron bowl, and you think a weak person can do that? Kettles, pots, umbrellas, thick felt, those felt blankets they used to use in India for rain and stuff. That's like 15-20 kilo of weight on you. Sun, heat. Sorry? Yeah, they did not have. What was the name of that? Baba tent. The 1,000 pounds.
1,000 pound tent.
800 gram tent or something. No. They had massive wool blankets, canvases, bowls, and so just picture that, and picture that you doing that every day. And on top of that, that's your practice. As in, that's how you also practice. So that's what I mean. People are a bit too precious in a sense, including myself where I started. You think, oh, I stole this, nothing must challenge me because this is important. Yeah, you start like that, but you have to see that's not where the problem is. The problem is not in your exercise, the problem is not in your eating, taking medicine, paying attention to your health. The problem is you doing those things for wrong reasons, which means it's your reasons that make it a problem or not. So in the same sense as I was just saying, if you want to go and develop solitude, you have to be able to take it. And that will often require, that degree of physical discomfort. Independence, yeah.
Getting wood, chopping wood.
Exactly. You won't have like 20 servants, 20 junior monk servants around you just attending to your every wish. No. You want solitude, you have to do it yourself. Which means you have to be able to do it yourself. And you won't be able if your body is simply not strong enough. Okay? You can't do it. You just can't take it. Can't get out of bed after one day's work. So that's what I mean. In that sense, exercise can start approximating that for those who don't work like that, who don't have that like toughness developed through work and so on.
Yeah, good cardio.
Yeah, get your heart pumping, whether through lifting weights or whether through running if you can, even treadmills and so on. But as I said, don't get obsessed about it either. Like, do a research, see which one is the most economical. By that I mean the least you can do, the most you get from it. And I think there's a universal consensus of those who know, of those who don't identify weights with bodybuilding, who know the difference, of like professional athletes. It's like, you know, heavy barbell training, kettlebells, body weight, pull-ups and things like that. Things that will, you know, increase your bone densities, joint strength, stability, all of that. Yeah, you can do your Tai Chi if you want in the spare time, but you actually want to stress the body in a controlled manner. That's how you get tougher, stronger. That's how you can eat 1 meal a day and go and climb the mountain and carry a 20-kilo backpack and sleep on a rock like a baby. And you know that difference, even, you know, out of like our own experience, when you live in Europe or some well-developed temple, and then, you know, you like even going to Thailand and staying in some more rural temples, coming to Sri Lanka. Or it's just that, people who were not prepared physically, well, they didn't last long. Or those who did had to go through a lot of pain very quickly, because they just haven't been ready for it. And above all, people end up fearing the prospect of physical discomfort, challenge, endurance, fatigue, even without actually engaging in it. And again, that's something we've seen many times, especially in the monasteries. They were about work, lots of work and work projects. When people had to work, you just see the genuine terror in their eyes, because they're just going to be overwhelmed. The mindfulness is going to go, and then they'll think about sensuality, and then they might disrobe. Like, that should worry you, not the fact that you might have to work or get tired or exercise. The fact that doing that will push you all the way back into sensuality. That's the problem there. So you can avoid it initially until you start developing yourself, but if you never make the effort to develop yourself in the right manner, you can't avoid it forever. Because as I said, once your health starts to fail, strength is relative. For an old person, body failing, what used to be weakness, it is now strength in comparison. So, lifestyle choices matter. Don't take your health for granted. Don't take your strength for granted. Don't take your freedom from illness for granted. But actually start emulating and preparing yourself for when those things go, for when those things start challenging you physically, which will then challenge you mentally. If you can take it, then you can take your mind even further above it and really not be affected. But as the Buddha said again in Sabbasa Sutta, there's a whole set of taints, a whole set of asaras to be abandoned purely by enduring, by toughing them out. And that's something that's often missing today. People are way too spiritual, so to speak. Even their exercise becomes spiritual. Yeah. And it doesn't actually pertain to the physical aspect anymore. Certainly lifestyles become too spiritual. No manual labor, nothing. So if you pay attention to if you're interested in practice, you pay attention to the lifestyle choices, the choices you make, not just for today and tomorrow, but in the long run as well, and factor that in. If you're interested in practice and developing the environment that will support your solitude and so on, pay attention to preparing your body physically to be able to do it. It's easy to keep the vanity out if you're careful. Avoid looking yourself in the mirror. Do the compound lifts or general type of exercises that will stress your body, not necessarily result in some developing of proportions and whatnot. But you do need to start stressing yourself. And also in the same manner, you can't expect to just jump into solitude from a busy life. I mean, you can be forced into it. You can allow yourself to be forced into it, which is usually how those popular Goenka retreats work. And that's why you get all these energy releases and whatnot. But that's because of your lifestyle beforehand. But if you don't go for that, you want to start exposing yourself to that type of stress gradually, but pretty much steadily. It's not optional, basically. So you recognize what the goal is, which is to be able to find joy and happiness and to prefer the actual physical solitude and absence of other people. And then to develop yourself for that, physically and mentally.
To how mentally stress your mind mentally, development?
Well, by being alone, deciding to be alone and not engage in any distraction, not answer any phone calls, don't go to see anyone. for the periods of time.
Yeah, no distraction.
No distraction, of course, yeah. Or as I said, if you are relatively fit physically, can take some pain and toughness, yeah, take a backpack and go for like 3 or 4 day hike in a little tent. It will give you a sense of how it used to be. And practice in that environment. Don't just endure and put up with elements, but actually take your mind above it.
Yeah, in terms of like just having a minor headache, little headache,
Sure.
instant
Sure.
painkiller.
Instant relief seeked immediately.
So if you just don't take the painkiller. And
Oh
just
yeah. No, so you recognize how you want to live, and take responsibility for it, and that's how you can take medicine when you're ill, for sake of staying healthy, not out of fear for getting sick. That's how you will eat, for the sake of staying alive and healthy, not for beautification or fear of death. No. You took responsibility for it. That's how you'll exercise, in order to be able to take the pain even more, without being afraid of it.
Even just to deal with simple dwelling,
Yeah.
taking you away from the elements, but not overly protecting you from
Exactly.
things
Yeah.
that.
Why do you need a thick, soft mattress? Why is that? Because the body's not used to sleep on hard. Why is it not used to? Because you never exposed it to it. You never stressed it in that manner. And it's not empty ascetic practices. Whether it's empty or not, it's whether you do it for the right reasons or not. I mean, the utmost, most inspiring ascetic performance can be more empty than eating and exercising, if you do it for the wrong reasons. Because if you do eating and exercising for the right reasons, the reasons that you understand, the reasons that will pertain to your freedom from suffering through your effort, yeah, that's what makes it wholesome. But if you're just going self-mortifying yourself for just the reason of whatever, proving to yourself that you do it, crushing yourself, or whatever, without any grain of reflection or insight, yeah, in that sense it's completely wrong.
Like, and being skin and bones means I'm on the right path.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, there were that suttas as well. King, I don't know if it's Pasanadi or the other one. Anyway, when he went to visit the Buddha, they used to stay in this kuti, and on the way to the kuti, he was walking through that park where all these young and healthy monks were doing walk meditation, they like pacing from one tree to the other, back and forth, and they were quite happy. And he said, "Wow, look at that! This teaching is so wonderful." Well, he praised the Buddha. The Buddha said, "What do you see praiseworthy in me?" He said, "Well, like, for example, just now, this teaching is so wonderful when you have like men in their youth, still fully able to access sensual pleasures, enjoy life, gave it all up, and they're happy about it. They're very content. While you go to the other ascetics and Brahmins, they're all dried up, skin and bone, just hating on everyone, miserable, unhappy." So you have to start discerning the reasons behind your actions. Whether those actions are aimed at health, life, strength, lifestyle in general, you are responsible for making them wholesome or unwholesome. They're not necessarily determined by themselves. Very few are. Like non-celibacy, of course, that's always unwholesome. Killing, harming, lying, stealing, that's always unwholesome. But pretty much everything else, it's going to be unwholesome if you do it for unwholesome reasons. Even if everybody else thinks it's wholesome. Oh, it's wholesome to sit in a Dhamma hall with 50 people in silence. That's noble and beautiful. It isn't. Often it isn't. Because often people end up doing it because they're still afraid to be alone. So they need support for their practice, which is supposed to develop them as an individual. That's a contradiction in terms. You develop as an individual by needing others. It doesn't work like that.